guys are good.
Macs are good.
Yeah, you can see
Green lights.
The bag, you can see everything.
You see, I have a green light? Yes, green
good.
light, green light, green light.
Good shot.
Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the Design Authority, live from St. Petersburg. And today we're going to be featured master historian Kevin Rose. Yes, he's an historian, and not only that, he's a history nut, right? That's what you said to
Absolutely.
me. I like that. I like nuts. History nuts. Oh my, I always say I like nuts, and I got one right here. History nut guy. How cool is that? And yesterday we had the pleasure of walking around St. Augustine and seeing all these amazing architectural landmarks, guys. Oh my God. I'm so inspired to go and create many, many more castles and palaces and homes and penthouses, whatever it is, because history can never change, but history sets the tone for style, for architecture, vibe, all of the above. So we're going to start from the beginning. What do you think about that? I mean, might as
Absolutely.
well, right? Let's start from the beginning. What's with St. Augustine? Let's tell everybody the story when it was founded and all of that. Okay, I'm turning it over. Go for it.
Absolutely. So, yeah, welcome to St. Augustine. We are the oldest continuously occupied European settlement in all of North America. That's the United States and Canada. That's a huge mouthful to say, so we just call ourselves the oldest city. And we're founded by the Spanish. And our first Spanish colonial period lasts nearly 200 years, till 1763, at which time by treaty we were handed off to the British. Now, our British period is short. It's only 21 years long, 1763 to 1784, but that does encompass the entire American Revolution, so it's somewhat historically important. Once those Brits lose and they are kicked out, Spain by treaty is given back Florida. We have a second Spanish colonial period, 1784 to 1821. Then we finally become an American territory. 1845, we become the 27th state in the Union. And then after that, we have a very important period of our history here in St. Augustine, and it's really important for all of Florida. We refer to it as the Flagler era. If you've never heard of Henry Flagler, now you're about to in great detail. Henry Flagler is, first of all, he is an industrialist. He is a giant of the Gilded Age. He was a founding partner of Standard Oil, along with John D. Rockefeller and three of the gentlemen in Cleveland, Ohio in 1870. Now, they go on to be the richest, most powerful company in the world. John D. Rockefeller becomes statistically the richest American ever live, and at one point, Henry Flagler was the second richest man in the country. Now, in subsequent years, the Flaglers, they moved to the New York City area, as most of those giants of the Gilded Age did. But in 1878, the Flaglers were hit with a terrible personal tragedy, as Henry's wife, Mary, is stricken with tuberculosis. But that twist of fate helps us a great deal here in Florida, because our doctors in New York recommend she spend her winters in Florida, hoping the warm winter weather will help those symptoms of tuberculosis. So they spend their winters here, 1878, 79, and 80 in Jacksonville, Florida. In 1881, Mary Flagler sadly passes away. In 1883, Henry remarries her nurse. A little bit suspicious, and not accepted by the high society of New York City due to her humble upbringing, but marry her he does. Her name's Ida Alice Shords, and we'll talk a bit about her later on. But they honeymoon in Florida. Henry's now been introduced to Florida. He likes it very much. He sees a lot of potential here. So they honeymoon here, first Jacksonville. Then by January of 1884, they finally make it to St. Augustine. And while they're here, there's a major construction project going on. Our first luxury hotel is being built, the San Marco Hotel. Stood right on the north end of the colonial city. It was a huge 5-story wooden structure, double wraparound porches, and it was so modern for the era. It even featured Otis elevators.
Oh, Otis. We say that all the time. Mr. Otis, huh?
Absolutely.
Ooh.
Pretty impressive for them in the 1880s. Yes. But it showed Henry the potential of St. Augustine as a vacation destination. Not for himself, but for all those giants of the Gilded Age. That big money tended to stick pretty close together. This big money really still does today. Now, most of them lived in and around the New York City area. They'd spend their summers at a beautiful little place called Newport, Rhode Island. But Newport winters are no better than New York City winters. So he thought this could be a fantastic winter destination for all those rich and powerful folks. He sets out to build luxury hotels of his very own to draw that clientele down. Long story short, it does work and really changes the lives of everybody in Florida from that point on, eventually becoming the vacation destination really the country, and now it's an international vacation destination. But it all traces back to Mr. Flagler building luxury hotels here in St. Augustine and continuing on throughout Florida. So that's kind of our history in a nutshell. It's much more complicated than that because it's 461 years of history.
Oh, honey, we have all day.
There's
460
a lot
years.
that happened here.
But that's the thing. 460 years. I mean, it totally evolved. It went from, I guess, the Spanish, and then there was like a whole thing in between, and then until the Gilded Age. I would want to hear a little bit more about that one.
The
How
Gilded
it evolved.
Age?
Yeah. Well, how it got to that. You know, how it in between. From,
Okay, well,
yeah.
how we get to being
Yes.
being a vacation destination.
Yes.
When Mr. Flagler first comes to St. Augustine, we're dying. We're a dying town. We're about half our previous high population-wise, and we're being replaced by Jacksonville. Now, Jacksonville at that point is already on the Eastern Seaboard Rail, and it's a deeper water port. They're simply replacing us. South of St. Augustine, you had two small fishing villages at Ormond and Daytona. And the next true city south of that was Key West, which was the largest city in Florida at that point by a factor of 4. It was 4 times Jacksonville, which was the second largest city. So as far as South Florida, it doesn't even exist yet at this point in history. Now, Mr. Flagler ends up acquiring a ton of land in Florida. Now, to deal with the land, he creates something called the Flagler Model Land Company. It is a real estate company created by Mr. Flagler because of the land he's acquiring. The reason he's acquiring land is when he comes to Florida to get to St. Augustine. First of all, the Eastern Seaboard Railroad stops in Jacksonville. So then you have to catch a ferry across and down the St. Johns River. And then a horse-drawn rail car, the additional 18 miles into the city of St. Augustine. Hot, miserable, and a little bit dangerous. Now that last portion of the trip took over 4 hours to go the last 18 miles. Mr. Flagler knew the rich and powerful folks he's targeting with his hotels never going to travel in that fashion. To solve the problem, he buys all the local railroads south of the St. Johns River.
That'll do it. I'll just get you there.
Now, there's 4 small railroads, but none are connected to each other.
Right.
And they don't even share the same gauge
Right.
of rail.
Right.
But he creates the Florida East Coast Railway. That's a thriving company to this very day. It runs up and down the eastern seaboard of Florida. He built the first railroad bridge across the St. Johns River, brings the rail right into St. Augustine, so his guests can arrive in comfort and style. The state of Florida loves what he does with this. It's going to develop our area. And at this point in our state's history, we are the poorest and least populated of all 44 states. We're so poor as a state, we can't afford to build our own infrastructure, but people like Mr. Flagler can afford it. So the state issues him a charter. This charter allows Henry Flagler to build infrastructure in the state of Florida in the form of railroad in exchange for Florida land. The deal ends up netting Henry Flagler for each mile of rail he built in the state. He received 3,480 acres of Florida land along the tracks.
Okay, 3,400 acres of the state of Florida for each
Mile.
mile of railroad. Okay, and how many miles were we talking about?
Well,
Let's do the math here.
eventually, Mr. Flagler knows, the value of a good deal, and he ends up extending the railroad all the way to Key West.
Might as well.
So that's over 500 miles of direct rail, plus all the rail that's running into the state. So, needless to say, Florida owes him a lot of land. Now, if that number is impressive, the original deal between him and the state of Florida was he got 8,000 acres of land per mile he developed.
Wow.
The state reneged on the deal after he passed away, claiming that any track over water didn't apply. So it ends up being 3,480 acres per mile. But still, at one point,
still a good deal.
Henry Flagler owned over 5% of the state of Florida.
5% of the state of Florida at one point. By the time he passed away, I mean, what was the total percentage of ownership? I'm curious.
That's where he gets to about 5%.
That's when, okay.
When
well,
he passes away in 1913. Now he's not building the railroad all at one time. He's building it incrementally. He never had plans to go to Key West until he got to Miami. But none of that area is developed until he takes the railroad there. Miami is not a town until 1894. When the railroad gets there, Palm Beach isn't considered a city until 1892 when he brings the railroad there. So he's literally incrementally developing the state as he goes.
Wow.
But he always said, Florida has the potential to be the American Riviera.
Oh,
He said all it was missing was 2 things, transportation and accommodations. and he brought both.
Oh, he did. He sure did develop it. And as we were walking yesterday in the Flagler Museum, which was the Ponce de Leon Hotel, I mean, what he did, what he created, that was the first hotel he created, right?
That was the first hotel he built. He ends up building quite a few, and we talked earlier about
Yes.
the major ones he built. He had a ton of hotels. Now, for all socioeconomic levels, you know, poor, middle, what would you consider middle class today, and exclusive. But the major hotels he builds are here, Ormond Beach, Daytona, Palm Beach, Miami, and then 2 in Key West.
Okay, so from the, let's say the Ponce de Leon Hotel, and then there was the Alcazar across the street.
So the Alcazar
Yeah.
comes about because when Mr. Flagler's building the Ponce de Leon, he realizes
Correct.
he's going to have another problem. And the problem is there's really nothing fun to do in 1880 St. Augustine.
Yes.
So to solve the problem,
Was he the type to say, I can't do boring also? I'll just, yeah, just asking.
he was
I'm
a little
sure.
more reserved than
Well,
that.
I mean,
I'm not
yeah,
sure
but
he ever
that-
made that move ever in his
Well,
life.
I'm sure he wasn't ready to say it in those days, but you know, being a Capricorn and creating all these hotels with all that entertainment, I'm sure he, you know, had in the back of his mind, maybe not for himself, but for the people coming to vacation.
He had the
just saying.
vision that people needed to be able
Exactly,
to do something.
exactly.
So entertainment, they needed entertainment. So he starts a second hotel, really a hotel in name only. It only have about 75 rooms in it, but it's going to have all the amenities inside, all the fun stuff to do. Now he wanted his 2 hotels to face each other, so both could use the amenities of the second.
Okay.
Now inside the Alcazar Hotel opens the year after the Ponce de Leon. Ponce de Leon is 1888, January. Alcazar is January of 1889. Now, inside the Alcazar, you would have found things like bowling alleys, gentlemen's clubs, gambling halls, taverns, wet and dry saunas, exercise rooms. Out back behind the hotel was an entire Italian-style plaza that had croquet, clay tennis courts, and you could even learn to ride a bicycle. At the Alcazar Bicycle Academy, it was all the rage at the time. But the centerpiece of the hotel, it really existed in the entire expanse of the hotels. 1 block long was the world's largest indoor swimming pool.
Ooh.
Now it's set in a 3-story portion of the building. Now the 2 levels above the pool have an opening in the floor the shape of the pool. So the pool was actually open all the way to the roof. And at that time, the roof was made up of glass windows. You could swim under the stars at the Alcazar. But it got even better than that. Your 2 levels above the pool were your ballrooms. When they had their big gala events at the hotel, they would put a gondola in the pool, put the orchestra in the boat to play for the ballrooms above.
Oh, like a gondola, like Venice gondola?
Absolutely.
Oh my
So
God.
nothing was too extravagant.
Oh, goodness, goodness, goodness. And you said he never traveled all over the world.
He was not a world traveler. The architectural influence comes from, when you don't know how to do something, you simply hire the people that know how to do it.
Bring him over.
And
Yes.
his personal architects were 2 gentlemen named Hastings and Carrere.
There you go.
Now, Mr. Flagler has a great eye for talent. The most successful people in the world, they don't know everything, but they know the right people to hire to get things done.
Like me? No. Yeah. No, sorry. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. We know good when we see it, but go on.
But the 2 architects he hires, Hastings and Carrere, now they are 24 and 25 years old when he hires them. They're kids. They're basically fresh out of architecture school in Paris. And so they have been educated in European architecture. And he brings them to St. Augustine. Now, he oversaw the general idea of what he wanted. Mr. Flagler always thought of, even though he'd never been to Europe, he always thought of St. Augustine as a European city in North America. So he wanted to preserve that look with everything he built here. And he actually incorporates the Moorish Renaissance architecture style.
I love that one. Yes.
Which a lot of people are trying to get away from the word Moorish Renaissance, trying to call it Spanish Renaissance.
But why? I mean, why are they trying to change history? I mean, why would they be trying to get away? This is a question that I really have. If it was always called the Moorish architecture, why are they trying to get away with it? That's just my own personal question.
And Spanish Renaissance has its own architecture, but
Right.
it's northern Spain.
Yeah.
The Moorish influence is southern Spain,
Right.
and it's a completely different look.
Okay.
But because it incorporates the Moors invade, to get into
Correct,
the history of it.
correct.
They invade the Spanish, the
Yes.
Iberian Peninsula in 711 AD.
Right.
And they are there. They're finally pushed off of the peninsula in 1492.
Okay.
So they're there for over 700 years.
Right.
Clearly, they're going to have an influence.
The influence is there.
Absolutely.
It's there, yes. And
Absolutely.
Like Alhambra in Spain.
The Alhambra
in
Castle is
Spain,
a
it's
Moorish fortress.
totally. I mean, that you compare that. I mean, I'm not saying they went all Alhambra in that one, but it's got a lot of influence.
Well, one building
Right?
we did here.
Yeah. Which one?
We have the Villa Zareta, which is the Villa Zareta Museum now.
Okay.
And that's the reason Mr. Flagler went with the Moorish influence. Because when he comes here, a gentleman by the name of Franklin Smith is already here. He has built his vacationeer home. Today it's the Villa Zareta Museum, but it is it copies the architecture of the Alhambra. Now it's not nearly as big, but it looks like a small portion of the Alhambra because he was a world traveler.
Right.
And he had seen that on his trips. Now the Alhambra is cut stone. That's what it's made out of, cut stone. But he built his winter home poured concrete. He had seen that actually on Lake Geneva, an example of that, and it actually goes back to Roman times.
Right.
But he employed the poured concrete construction technique, and really that's very prevalent in everything Mr. Flagler builds as well. He uses poured concrete.
Imagine the forms you can create with all that poured concrete, you know?
Absolutely. And what he's doing, he's building for permanence.
Yes.
He's building a legacy that can far outlive him, and you know, he died 113 years ago. So his legacy is outliving him.
I love it. Oh, absolutely. Now, I have some questions here from people watching us. They want to know, what do the lions represent? Like, we notice the lion, and we love lions.
Question.
I'm loving them.
You will see lions
Yes.
all over St. Augustine.
Yes.
Now, a lot of people see them and they immediately go to British influence. That's not true. It's Spanish. So, and it goes back to the history of the Spanish Empire. When Spain is first coming in, now, prior to the influx of the Muslims, which are the Moors,
Correct.
coming into Spain, Spain is basically just a bunch of different kingdoms that are individual to themselves. They have alliances and whatnot, but they're kingdoms. Well, when the Moors invade, eventually these kingdoms are going to have to start aligning together to resist the Moorish influence. And the two kingdoms that come together to form the original Spanish Empire, the Kingdom of Castile and the Kingdom of Leon, the castle and the lion came together. And in fact, you see the first Spanish Empire flag has two castles and two lions on it.
Yes.
So that's where the lion comes from. It's actually the Kingdom of Leon. You have Aragon and other kingdoms involved, but that's the two, and that's where you get the lion influence from.
Well, wow. I wonder where they got it from, a Kingdom of Leon. I'm sure they had a reason why they adapted El Leon, the lion.
Well, it's because of the lion. The lion's the king of the jungle. It had a big reputation in Africa. And you're already having the colonial powers in Africa at that point prior to coming to the New World.
Yes, so it all starts with really the original concept. The lion rules, the king of the jungle, the king of Leon, and then there it goes. It keeps going after generation and generation, and that's how design evolves. I mean, even flags and symbols evolve from, it starts somewhere and it keeps reinventing itself and evolving.
But the good thing about that is when it evolves from one point, you don't have to know the start point. You can usually trace it back to where it started.
Yes. And that's what I love doing when it comes to this design authority. You know, we're fusing styles, we're fusing different things, but at the end of the day, you can trace it back if you go back in history. That's why I believe historians are my heroes, because you guys know the history of it and the evolution and how it goes from point A to point B to point C. And that's why we're here. You can't change the past, you can't change history. And that's why I'm telling everybody how important this is. Make sense?
Absolutely.
In my own words, okay? In my own words. So, and what about the Fountain of Youth? Where is it? I need some.
All right.
I need me some of that, honey. Where is that one?
So the Fountain of Youth, first of all, we have an attraction in St. Augustine. It's a fine attraction, the Fountain of Youth. It's an archaeological park. They have two active archaeological digs going on there all the time. It is part of the original settlement of Saloy, which was the native village that was here when the Spanish first arrived. That's the Timucuan or Timucuan natives or Indians. And the Fountain of Youth attraction is on that property. But the Fountain of Youth legend in Florida goes back to Ponce de Leon. Now, Ponce de Leon is the founder of Florida for the Spanish in year 1513. Now, Ponce de Leon has a tremendous history. He is on Christopher Columbus's second voyage to the New World. He is a three-time governor of Puerto Rico. He basically built modern Puerto Rico, but in his second stint as governor, he's caught up in a power struggle in the Spanish government. Now, the old admiral of the seas was Christopher Columbus.
I have a quick question because you mentioned the Leon lion. Was he from Leon, Spain?
He was, and
that's
I'm
why
going to
he's
get
called
to that.
Ponce
Absolutely.
de Leon. Okay, good, got it.
So he is caught up in a power struggle in the Spanish government. He is now the old admiral of the seas was Christopher Columbus, and that's your highest-ranking military officer in the Spanish military. But the new admiral of the seas is Columbus's son Diego, who does not care for Ponce de Leon and has him removed as the governor of Puerto Rico. So Ponce de Leon is already a legend in his own time. So the king makes him an offer: sail west. Any land you discover, you're governor for life. The first thing he hit was Bimini Island in the Bahamas, which he did claim, but it's not a very impressive landmass. So he keeps going. Now, unbeknownst to him at this point, the Gulf Stream is sweeping him north, and he comes ashore in Florida, 30 degrees 8 minutes northern latitude, just north of where we are right now. And he claims the entire area in the name of Spain. That's April 2nd of 1513. It's right in the middle of the Easter season, but it's also in the middle of Spain's corresponding Festival of Flowers. Florida's very lush, especially in April. He thinks to call this new land La Florida, or the land of flowers.
There you go, La Florida. That's right.
Well done, Ponce de Leon. It's been that ever since. But
Yes.
the only reason he actually comes ashore, he's out of fresh water. Fresh water is the most important thing on the open ocean besides a boat. He sees the native village of Saloy. He knows they have to have fresh water because people are living there. So he comes ashore, and it is a friendly encounter. They trade trinkets back and forth. He does fill up his water cask. But he knows several other things in his journal. First of all, how healthy everyone is, which I find a bit ominous, but also how tall both the men and the women are. By the way, the Timucuan are a matrilineal and matriarchal society. Power passes through the woman's side of the family, and most of your Timucuan chiefs are women. And third, how long-lived some of these people appear to be. He sees individuals he guesses in their 80s and 90s, maybe a few over 100 years old. Now, that's a point in history where the Spanish are commonly dying in their 40s and 50s. He notes all that in his journal, and he sails away. He's headed back to Puerto Rico, but he's having a terrible time getting there because he is fighting a brutal ocean current. And at that point, he is the first European to document the Gulf Stream. Huge discovery for
wow.
all
Look at
Europeans
that.
in the New World, because utilizing the Gulf Stream cuts a month off the trip back to Europe. That's a nice discovery. Now, he does make it back to Puerto Rico. He returns to Florida in 1521. He's here to establish a colony, but he picks the west coast of Florida, about where Port Charlotte is today. He picks that side because it is closer to the new frontier for the Spanish, which is Mexico. But he runs into a different group of natives called the Calusa, and they're not as friendly as the Timucuan. In a battle with the Calusa, he takes an arrow to the upper thigh. He is the first European surgical patient in all of North America. Not always good to be first at something, but he does survive the surgery, dies 2 weeks later in Havana. Most likely infections from that surgery, and today he's buried in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Now, but his name, Juan Ponce de Leon, that's not his real name. His real name is Juan Ponce.
Juan Ponce. Okay, Juan
Or Ponce. It's
Juan
pronounced
Ponce.
Ponce
Uh-huh.
in Spain.
Yes, Juan
But to be
Ponce.
named Juan Ponce in Spain at that point is the two most average names you can have. It would be like being Bill Smith in America today.
Right.
So his full title was Don Juan Ponce de Leon because he was from
Leon.
Leon. So that's where we get Ponce
Yeah,
de Leon.
so it's kind of like Leonardo da Vinci. It's Leonardo da Vinci. He was born in Vinci, Italia, and that's Leonardo da Vinci. So Ponce de Leon.
Exactly.
It makes sense. That's how, and that was his title pretty much, and that's what he's known by. That's awesome. All right. What
So
else?
that's where we get that from.
Uh-huh.
And of course, Leon is a prominent province at that point.
And there goes your lions.
There we
It's
go.
where lions
Absolutely.
everywhere.
And
So
we still have them everywhere today.
I wonder if he was a Leo too, maybe. Never know. Okay, so he's cracking up. He knows me by now, okay? By the way, he said, Cancer, fellow Cancer guys, you know who you are. Yes, right? He's
That's
cracking
right.
up. But you know what? I relate to everything, everything's connected. Everything is connected. So, okay, so what else happened after that? And then that was between this and that. Was that around the same era that Hernando Cortés conquered Mexico? Same
Cortés
era?
is right around that. He starts
Cortés,
in 1518 is when
Right,
the Spanish begin the conquest of what is now Mexico.
Right,
Yes.
right.
Your hometown, Mexico
That's
City.
my hometown, baby.
Already,
yes.
already
Oh.
existed at that point. Now, it was
Yes.
known as, I'm going to butcher this
Oh,
name.
yes.
Tenochtitlan was what the Triple Alliance called it. We call those guys the Aztecs today, but they didn't call themselves the
Right,
Aztecs. But that was
right.
the head of the Triple Alliance, was the biggest city in the three cities of the Triple Alliance. And that's when Cortés attacks the Triple Alliance eventually and overcoming them in 1521. 1522, I think, is when they finally take over that city. Now the Spanish don't destroy it; they just take it
They
over.
took over because this is my first grade, second grade, my history. You know how you learn history, and I learned that Hernan Cortés came, he conquered, they burned Cuauhtémoc's feet. That whole thing where they burned his feet, the main chief. I mean, yeah, that's the Mexican history, obviously, but you know, that's just what I learned when I was a little girl. And things come to mind because now it all connects to the timeline, the time frame, you know, the evolution of all of these things.
Well, we're all connected.
Oh, we're all connected.
And even though the
Yeah.
world is vast at that point to these explorers, humankind is very small.
Yeah.
The planet doesn't pass 1 billion people until 1900. So
Right.
all of this is all interconnected. I mean, that's the reason he chose Port Charlotte area, Ponce de Leon did, because it was closer to Mexico. This is all happening at the same time. So it's all interconnected.
Yes.
And the Spanish are the world superpower at that point. The first world traders are actually the Portuguese, but the Spanish overcome them, and they are the world superpower. So
Wow.
it's not the British. The British Empire is coming, but
Oh,
it's
it
not
comes-
there
came
yet.
later,
They
came
are
later.
a minor player at this
Yeah.
point in history.
Yeah. Wow, amazing. So by the time we get to my friend over here, the main guy, what's his
Henry
name?
Flagler?
Oh, Henry Flagler. Guys, I have so many names in my mind right now because they're all connecting in my brain. But yeah, Henry Flagler. So he came and created all these hotels, okay? I want him as a client. I got to be honest with you. So if he was my client, okay, I made a presentation, guys. I have a full-blown presentation right here. We got renderings. Okay, you're gonna enjoy these. I got a surprise for you.
Awesome.
So if I were to design, and Henry Flagler was my client, and he's bringing in all the artists from all over the world, It says, Perla, design me this hotel. This is what I would do in one of them. I mean, you know, we got the Alcazar, we got all the different ones, but check this out. Hotel Alcazar, let's say. Okay, Spanish Renaissance Revival, right? So this is how I would imagine it. This is how I would decorate, let's say, the lobby. For sure, carry the architecture into a complete interior experience because the ceilings, to me, I'm always saying the ceilings are the icing on the cake. And I noticed that in all these major landmarks and all of that, a lot of the things that survive is really the ceiling. Like even in Europe, when I walk all around Europe, like I'm going to throw other palaces like Versailles and all the different landmarks, historical landmarks, the ceiling always stands the test of time. So the ceiling to me is very important. You know, I'm sure the architects got very heavily involved with the ceilings, with the beam work and the hand painted. You mentioned when we walked through Flagler College yesterday, how it all, you know, all the different ceilings with the history, everything meant something, the different things on
Absolutely.
the ceilings, right?
The ceilings last,
let's
though.
talk about that.
The ceilings last because it's very simple. No foot traffic, nobody's touching them.
There you go.
That's why they last.
That's why they last.
But also, the people that are designing these places, they know that. They know what's going to last.
Yes.
So they don't skip
don't
out on the
ignore it.
ceiling
Yes.
because it's an easy place to display stuff that's going to last for a long time.
And in my eye is what hugs you. It's kind of like the fifth wall because you're designing all the walls, but then you have this wall above you. It's kind of like your crown. To me, the ceiling is really as important, if not more important, than the walls because it kind of connects your walls together. And then on top of that, your floors. I mean, I'm talking about modern design that we're doing right now. You know, people just do like a basic floor, but you know, in those days, they used to make patterns with mosaic, with marble, like what we saw yesterday at Flagler College.
Absolutely.
They were so involved with the flooring, they were so involved with the ceilings, and even the walls. Every detail mattered because it's this aesthetical beauty surrounding you that gave you that whole vibe. And I get passionate about it, so ignore me if you see me go nuts like that. I can't help it, you know. And then what about the suites? You know, people came, they travel how many hours from New York to Florida? How many hours? on
72
train?
hours, give or take,
Right.
on train.
Okay.
So you're talking, it's 3 days. By the way, Mr. Flagler did hire an interior designer.
Oh, honey, I want to know him or her. Yeah, we want to compare
Well,
some
you already
notes
know
here.
him.
Oh,
It's Louis Comfort
oh
Tiffany.
yeah, I love. Oh,
Louis
Tiffany.
Comfort Tiffany did the entire interior design of the Ponce de Leon Hotel.
Tiffany, yes, Tiffany, darling, Tiffany. Oh, honey, we gotta talk over here. No, Tiffany, those windows. Oh, wait, we speak of Tiffany. Hold on. I would definitely work with him as collaboration. Honey, let's do some. Wait, hold on. I got some Tiffany style going on here. Look at that. All right, so let's
Nice.
say he said to me, let's design the major dining hall. Tiffany, let's take some notes together. Let's sketch out some windows, darling, ceilings and whatnot. How about something like that? All right, so this is what I would design for the dining room. For sure, I would incorporate some kind of a barrel style ceiling with all the storytelling like they did in the day, bringing all those fabulous artists from Europe, right?
All over the world. The finest artists in the world were here working for Mr. Flagler while the hotels were being built.
Oh my God, I can only imagine getting their sketches before putting them up on the ceiling and say, yes, this one, let's put this here, let's tell that story, let's tell that story, all over the ceiling. Hand painted Spanish squares, the images, coats of arms, because I know that was very popular in that. And then for sure, Tiffany, darling. Oh, Tiffany. You mentioned yesterday that Tiffany company, the jewelry, was before. How does that work?
The
Are they
family,
related?
the Tiffany family had
So
been
it's
in
a
the jewelry
family.
business 100 years before Louis Comfort Tiffany comes along.
Okay.
Tiffany Glass Company, that's his company. And Mr. Flagler is actually the first corporate client. Instead
Okay,
of
right. He was
him
private.
hiring Tiffany, him putting Tiffany windows in the hotel as a prestigious thing, it was actually prestigious for Tiffany to be working for Henry Flagler. That's what puts Tiffany on the map as far as the glass company.
So he was just doing jewelry, or
No,
like
his
the family
family was doing jewelry.
was jewelry, and then he was what, like a grandson, or
He is, I believe he is the third of the Tiffany's,
Third.
if you go back to the start. I
And
could be
he-
wrong about that, but I
Yeah.
think he's the third generation
Okay.
after Tiffany Jewelry is already established.
and he was specializing in glass. He was a designer,
Interior design.
He was interior
And
designer.
he did glass too. But
Well, I want to know what sign he is. I'm going to find that one out. Guys, find out Tiffany's his sign, okay? But then again, the bedrooms, the suites, they coming from this long 3-day trip on the train. They want to go relax in their bedroom. So what kind of a bedroom would I design? So obviously, again, based on the type of materials in the day and the type of furniture, so that it would carry out the architecture and the comfort within the suite, I would bring in obviously earth tones, lots of tapestries, lots of textures, and give them like a homey flavor. They want to feel like they're arrived home in their own suite. That's my concept. What do you think about that one?
I like that. And you got to understand the clientele.
Yes.
These are the richest of the rich. First of all, the Ponce de Leon Hotel is invitation only.
Oh.
You can't just show up and stay, no matter how much money you have. But it's the 400 families of New England is who's being targeted. Mr. Flagler would send out his initial offer to these families. He would send out basically a booklet, 34 pages, talking about the resorts and having people book those. Now, budget-wise, like decorating the rooms, every room, the least expensive room decorated at the Ponce de Leon Hotel was $1,000 decoration, but this is $1,888.
That's a nice budget, guys. A very
It's a
nice
huge budget because
Yes.
the average, the beginning price, the cheapest prices were $5 per night at the hotel. So,
Oh, my
But the
goodness.
rooms are $1,000 decoration.
Yeah, so listen, for
Plus.
that price, this was considered, I'm sure, a 5-star hotel.
It was
maybe
the finest
7.
hotel in the world.
Finest hotel
when
in
it
the
opened.
world. So I'm giving it like a 7-star at that point. I don't know. That's just me based on what I see now in the world. And it's got to be all about the details. Luxury is all in the details. The sheets, the type of sheets I would use. I would go with like 1,000 count Egyptian cotton. I would go with embroidered sheets with a hotel logo. I would give them the little slippers with the logo, for them to take home. Everybody got to get a pair of slippers and a robe, and the most comfortable pillows and rich textures. And not only that, but right now we're doing a castle in Wellington, in
Nice.
Florida. Okay, and we decided that every suite's going to have its own vibe, its own look, its own theme. And the theme there is the crown jewels. So we named the Sapphire Suite Sapphire, so it had a whole theme around sapphire. Then we did an amethyst, a whole theme around amethyst. So for his hotel, I would suggest that every suite has its own identity, every personality. Maybe come out with a different city in Spain and create, okay, this is the León, this is the Barcelona, and just come out with different, vibes and look in each suite. What do you think of that idea?
I like that idea, except you have 540 different rooms.
Okay, so we'll
So
do
there's
you-
a lot of ideas
So
to be
we'll
put
come
out there.
We'll come out with different versions of it. We'll come out with stories. There's always a way. That's good. More for us to create. I like that. Still, we'll do all 500 different.
I did want to point out a difference in time frames. The world's
Yes.
different back then. All the restrooms were at the end of the hall.
Oh,
There was only one suite that had a private bathroom.
Which one? His own.
Mr. Flagler.
I was just
personal
going to
suite.
say, I don't think he's the type to share bathrooms.
But
Yeah,
get this,
okay.
the presidential suite did not have a bathroom. The president had to go down the hall just like everybody else did.
I love it. I love it. By the way, Louis Tiffany is an Aquarius. Yeah, Aquarius, of course, outside the box kind of person. Yeah, see, there you go. So, okay, so how did that work? I mean, if you had, let's say, one floor with how many suites and only one bathroom, did they have a schedule to use it? Because this
No.
is like a whole new thing for us, you know, in this time and age. Just saying,
Now
how
you
does
will
that
hear
work?
people say that, oh, it had hot and cold running water in every room. That's not true.
Okay.
It's just not true. You could order pitchers of hot and cold water. You had a basin in your suite, but you just didn't have like a full bathroom like we would see today. But no, there's no schedule or anything. It's basically on an honor
First come,
system.
first serve. No.
But each hallway has its own bathroom. So
Okay.
there's a lot of bathrooms in the place.
Right.
And most of the suites have their own fireplace.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's like, you know, it's hard to visualize that when I'm not going to say we're spoiled, but it's a different era. We're living in a time where every hotel suite that you book has its own bathroom built into it, you know. And now we're talking about going back how many years now? You're talking.
Oh, 1888. So
Right,
you're talking, what, 140
Right,
plus years
so
ago.
it's technology and you know, everything has evolved, but still that's luxurious. The fact that, you know, you have your suite and just go down the hall and there's your bathroom. I mean, I don't know.
Now you see that
Yeah,
changes almost
think about it.
immediately. Though.
Yeah,
you
and-
see that change like as Mr. Flagler is building hotels throughout Florida.
Oh.
It changes during that time. The ones in Miami and Palm Beach have their own restrooms in the hotel.
Oh, so the breakers, by the time he built the breakers, they already had their own bathroom in there.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Things are changing
Amazing.
fast at that
Yes,
point in history.
yes.
Things are changing fast anyway. I
Yes.
mean, we're just, when the hotel opens, Ponce de Leon Hotel opens, we're only 23 years past the Civil War.
Oh,
So it's a huge jump in our society.
Yes.
That Gilded Age
true.
is
It's
where
true.
America becomes America.
yeah.
We go from a third world backwater country coming out of a bloody civil war. Nobody cares about us around the world. Within 40 years, we're the most dominant economic force the world had ever seen. And it's really can be attributed to about 25 guys.
Yeah.
And Henry Flagler was one of those.
Henry Flagler. Then you mentioned Thomas Edison because Flagler had the first electrified hotel, which was,
the Ponce de Leon's the
Yeah.
first hotel in the world to be completely lit with electricity.
Amazing. In the world.
In the world.
The world.
3 years ahead of the White House having electric lights.
Unbelievable.
The
Good
generators
fact.
at the
Yeah.
Ponce de Leon Hotel, personally built by Thomas Edison and his company. Now, but Edison is a generation younger than Flagler. A lot of people lump those Gilded Age guys into one age group. That's not true. They're, because they're across several generations. Such as train baron Cornelius Vanderbilt is a generation older than those guys. Rockefeller and Flagler and
They were-
Carnegie, they're
right,
about that
yeah.
same era. But
Yeah.
then you have Ford and Edison and people like that
come
are,
back,
are
yeah.
later on. They're
They're
another
later.
generation, even though they all know each other.
Right.
They're not always friends, but they all know each other because business is brutally cutthroat back then. Brutal.
Yes, because it was like the high society, all the.
Well, that and there's very
Elite.
few regulations as far as how you treated labor and stuff like that. So,
Interesting.
and it was very cutthroat.
Oh,
The railroads were extremely cutthroat. But hey, that's just but as they say, iron sharpens iron, and it's what made the country what it and that could never have happened in Europe. We couldn't have had the Gilded Age start in Europe because they were such a class society. It's still kind of
Oh.
are today. Well,
Yes.
that's not true here.
Yeah.
Now we
No.
tried to import a little bit of that when America's coming into being America. We had the 400 families of New England. They're the former aristocracy of Europe. But then you have people like Flagler and Rockefeller coming along who were dirt poor growing up, but they made their own fortunes. Now these elite families tried to look down on those people. But sometimes their piles of money get so tall you can't look down on them anymore.
That's right.
'cause you're having to look up at
Yeah,
them.
like, oh, well, yeah.
And that's where we kind of start blowing apart that class society.
Yes.
And Flagler was a big part of that. He didn't look down on people because they didn't have a lot. He wanted, because he always saw himself as just a poor boy that made good. He never thought he was elite.
Right.
And he didn't look down on people that had less than him. And people understood that. They appreciated who he was, and they realized, hey, he doesn't think he's any better than me. He just has more stuff than I do. And that was the way
Yeah.
they looked at it. But they loved him for it. He treated his workers good. He was an abolitionist. He didn't believe in slavery. Now, he didn't think we should fight a civil war over it.
Right. But he didn't believe
he
he-
didn't believe
yeah.
in slavery. And he treated people well, and his workers loved him for it.
Love that. I love that. And it shows. It shows. I mean, bringing people from everywhere and the way he treated his workers. When you treat someone right and well, they're going to want to give more back. So that's just, he created the right atmosphere in his whole workforce. That's amazing. I love that. So this all happened around, I would say, the Industrial Revolution too. So
Sure.
everything is, happening together.
Yeah, that kicks it off.
Yeah.
the jumping technology kicks it off.
Yeah, I mean, you got all the tools and the right attitude and all of that. He really did. And then, what about the Titanic? Was there any people that this society stayed in there in the Titanic? Because was that in the
Absolutely.
same era? Yeah, I'd like
Absolutely.
to know that.
Titanic's 1912.
Right,
So,
so-
I'm sure there were countless people on the Titanic
Yeah.
that had stayed at the Ponce de Leon
Imagine
Hotel.
that, because there was a lot of obviously elite people there.
A lot of
you know,
rich people on the
yeah.
Titanic.
Wow.
Absolutely.
So, okay.
John Jacob Astor
Oh.
IV was the richest man to die on the Titanic.
Okay.
And the Astors, actually, Mr. Flagler liked the Astors.
The Astors, right?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Astor, Florida is named after John Jacob Astor. But he was the richest man to die on the Titanic. And I don't know it actually for a fact. I am sure he stayed at the Ponce de Leon.
Interesting.
Because that's his
This
people.
is the destination. That
Absolutely.
was the destination for them, and that, yeah. And like you said, most of them, they all knew each other most of the time, so they all
Knew
yeah.
each other.
Oh, they
Some
did.
didn't like the others, but they all knew. The big rivalry was between John D. Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie, or Carnegie, depending on what part of the world you're from. But yeah, they did not see
They
eye
were
to
the
eye.
rivals. They
Absolutely.
were competitors. Yeah, I know how that is. But sometimes having that competition makes you do better. Yes, it's okay. We want that. We want that competition.
Well,
So,
what really got
yeah,
that started was Rockefeller basically broke and bankrupt Andrew Carnegie's mentor.
Oh, look at
And
that.
I do believe he ends up it either broke him to the point where he died, or he may
Mm-hmm.
have even killed himself. But I can't remember that story exactly. But Carnegie never forgave him for that. So anytime they could go head to head, they did, and they kept trying to outdo each other. They kept trying to be the richest man in the world.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, they buried the hatchet later on when the financier J.P. Morgan dies.
Oh,
And then
J.P. Morgan. Yes.
J.P. Morgan. He was one of the big three at that point. He controlled a lot of the money at that point. He was America's banker. He actually bailed out America twice by loaning it money. That's nice. But when he dies, Carnegie and Rockefeller kind of bury the hatchet. But then they're still trying to outdo each other. So now they're trying to give away more than the other one can give away. So they go from trying to get to the richest
love it.
to giving it all away, and who can do the more philanthropic work. You can never take the competitor out of those guys.
There you go. So society benefits from that, from
Absolutely.
the rivalry. So
Absolutely.
it's all good. It's all good. Oh wow, that's amazing. What other stories do we have from those, that era, those families that relate to? What about Tiffany? Did he do work for anybody else that we know of after this first commercial
Oh, he
project?
does. He does a ton of stuff. I
He-
mean,
he
Tiffany
kept
Glass
going.
is world famous. World famous. But when he decides to shut down his company, he's got a factory in New York. It's producing all this beautiful stained glass. Well, he doesn't. He has all this stained glass in reserve, in storage. When he decides to shut down the company,
Most people know Tiffany from your traditional Tiffany lamp.
Yep, absolutely.
I mean, that's what Tiffany is known for, nowadays.
but what he did, now he's worth a fortune.
Yes.
But to prevent the market from being flooded by all this stuff that's in the factory, when he closes down the shop, he has all that inventory destroyed. However, I personally know some people that had relatives that worked there that took some of that stuff home with them. So stuff like that always is
Yes,
preserved. It's
that
sitting in
happens.
attics
Yeah.
around New York City right now.
Worth quite a bit.
And it just keeps getting more valuable every day.
Yes.
Now, we talked about Rockefeller and Carnegie. You see libraries all over the place and
Yes.
stuff like that. And that's how they kind of helped out society themselves. Henry Flagler doesn't see it that way. First of all, he didn't like naming things after himself.
Oh, he was very humble, yes.
Those guys
yes.
did. He saw it as an insult to God. He didn't want to glorify himself above God, so he usually name things after himself. And he was actually asked by a newspaper reporter once, why don't you build all these libraries like your friends Rockefeller and Carnegie do? And he goes, well, first of all, I don't have to put my name on something to feel better about myself. But he said, the way I can benefit society, I build really good companies that pay really good salaries, and then people can help themselves. That's how he saw it. All a rising tide raises all
Sure
boats.
did, yeah.
And that's how he did. He paid his workers well. He took the railroad workers who were working in extraordinarily bad conditions. I mean, you're jungles of Florida. You have to build the towns because the towns don't exist. But his overall theme was he told every one of his managers of these camps this: the conditions have to be better than what the U.S. military provides. That's his low bar, is the military conditions. It's got to be better than that. Because a lot of these guys are Civil War veterans, and he wants them treated better. So he goes, you take care of the people who take care of you. take care of the workers, and they'll take care of you.
Hmm.
Now, there's always a few disgruntles throughout. There's a few lawsuits and stuff throughout history, and people can always point to that. But the workers, like building the railroad across the ocean to Key West, the workers were so worried that Henry Flagler was going to die before they could get that done. And they were so proud the day it was completed. And Uncle Henry, as they all referred to him, could ride his own iron into Key West.
They called him Uncle Henry.
Absolutely.
I like that. Oh, wow. That's a very nice. Yeah.
So I think I got off the topic there, but sorry, I
Oh,
get a little crazy about history
that's all
sometimes.
part of the topic. It's things that you just don't know unless you hear from someone that knows, and we want to know. So here we are. So yeah, and then back to Tiffany, okay? Because I'm amazed about him being a fellow interior designer. Yay! He created a certain style, and how can you tell? I want to know the main principles and forms that he used. So when you look at the stained glass window, I did see a stained glass window, and I assumed that that was a Tiffany glass because, you know, he did most of the work. But the one down there by the court, you know, we saw that, and you said that's not.
You're talking about the entrance.
Yes, the entrance.
The carriageway.
By the carriageway. There was one there.
It's not Tiffany.
And if no one knows, they would assume that's also part of the Tiffany glass.
You can almost always determine that it's not a Tiffany if it has a scene.
A scene, like a floral. Or
Yeah, like that was a vase of flowers.
a flower vase.
Tiffany
yeah.
is almost exclusively designs. He did try to do a few scenes, but that just wasn't his thing.
No.
He is almost always designs. Now, he is a master of manipulating light and color, but the scenes is not his thing.
So he didn't do scenes. So he created more, like I noticed he had like architectural pieces in between and patterns in between. Like
What
I
he's
noticed
doing,
that.
he's adhering to the overall theme.
Okay.
He's not putting a painting
There you
made
go.
out of stained glass in the window. It's just part of the overall appearance.
So he's carrying the architecture within the glass itself.
Right.
I love that.
It is supposed to enhance everything around it, not
Oh my
stand
God, I'm
apart.
getting chills. Yeah, oh, Aquarius, yeah, okay, no, that's just me thinking. Okay, so that I understand what he's doing now. You just said it. You just described it, and I'm visualizing it right now. So, but then he started creating things like chandeliers and table lamps with that, which was, what would you consider that the more commercialized type of product he created for the masses?
It's
or-
all commercialized, and there was nothing created for the masses. This is all the super elites buying this stuff.
Oh, well, there you go. There was the super elite were getting the florals and all of that.
Yeah,
within
people
the
like me are not putting Tiffany windows in anything.
No.
No chance. No chance.
Well, why not? Tiffany inspired. I mean, yeah.
It's a money thing, and that was big money.
Yeah, so there you go. But still, that he created a whole movement and inspired so many
absolutely.
glass artists and stained glass artists to create other lines inspired by what he created. That's how
Absolutely.
it started, I
Absolutely.
think, you know. So, okay, what else do we want to talk about the Gilded Age? That's so much fun. What about fashion? Ooh, yes, let's talk fashion. Were there any particular designers, fashion designers in that era that people said, oh, I'm going to wear Chanel or whatever? Who was around?
You're out of my you're out of my specialty right there. Now we're Victorian era.
Oh, we could figure it out,
So
yeah.
the designs are that era.
Okay, Victorian.
Yeah.
Oh, I know a lot of people that like Victorian. Okay, so obviously there was the hats and the little umbrella.
What I find funny is like the gentlemen will wear suits everywhere.
Oh, suits, yeah.
Even in Florida, even down by the water, they're still wearing suits.
No, you mean there was no shorts and flip-flops?
Nobody's wearing shorts and flip-flops.
No shorts
Absolutely
and flip-flops.
not.
But they still had their hat, their little
And
top
the
hat.
hat, absolutely. Now, also, people need to know, the beach isn't a thing at this time. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal at all. It's the climate. It's the warm weather. The water is irrelevant. It's not irrelevant, but it's not important.
Right, they weren't
So
like, yeah.
they're not going to the beach to go
Right,
swimming.
right.
In fact, the big draw for the water was the yachting.
Oh, okay. The
And
yacht.
Flagler resisted a bridge being built across Matanzas Bay because the yacht club sat right on the bayfront, and it would interrupt the yacht races they would have up and down the river. So he didn't want that to happen.
Well, there you go. So that, yeah. So, you know, when back to the fashion too, I mean, probably, you know, there was no designers, I'm sure there were, but it's all about the materials they would wear. So even though they followed a certain fashion style, maybe the materials would vary as the material they wore in New York, where they would probably do wool during the winter and still have that vibe of the fashion, and then maybe start with linens and cottons here in Florida. That's how I imagine it. I don't know. You just adapt to the weather, but you still can be looking fabulous, no?
Well,
Or-
all the style, all the designer styles coming from Europe.
Oh.
And it's all being influenced by the 400 families of New England.
Absolutely.
Because they
influenced.
love everything about Europe except the government.
Well, there you go. It's European
so
influence.
they want to be
Yeah.
European influence.
Yes, yes.
Now, we get away from that after the Gilded Age because people go more practical. Plus, we have the Great Depression that kind of
Right.
equals all the playing fields.
Yeah.
But you know, fashion always is going to
Yeah.
survive.
Yeah.
But
It survives and it also evolves, like you said. You know, it
but
keeps
Flagler's
evolving.
got 3 wives, and the first wife is just, you know, she's just a common person. They're not, you know, they're not rich when he gets married. When they get married, he's not rich. But the second wife is a bit of a fashionista,
Oh,
if you
she
will.
was a fashionista,
Oh
a
yes,
second
she
wife,
loved.
okay.
Now she comes from nothing.
Okay.
She basically grows up as a homeless person in New York. Her father dies when she's an infant. But she ends up being Flagler's first wife's one of her nurses. She ends up marrying Flagler, and then she has always
so
had
wait
these,
a minute. The first wife's nurse that passed away ended up marrying Flagler later.
The first wife passes away of tuberculosis.
Right.
The wife, he marries one of her nurses.
Of the nurses,
and
okay.
that becomes the second wife.
That was the second.
Ida
And
House.
did they have any children? I always wonder that.
He has 3 children, all with the first wife.
All with the first, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
His pride and joy is his oldest, is his daughter. He has 2 daughters, and his son is the youngest.
Okay.
Jenny Louise is the oldest daughter. Now, she passes away tragically.
Oh.
At 34 years of age, she dies during childbirth, or as a result of childbirth, and the child died. That was Henry's first grandchild, passed away, and then weeks later, after the child passes away, this happens in New York City. Mr. Flagler's here for the winter season. He invites his daughter and her husband to come down to rest and recover from this horrible event, and she dies on the way down.
Oh, tragic.
Now, this is, first of all, he has 3 children, but this is his first, and this is his favorite. Basically, she was just like he was. And he is devastated. To pay homage to her, he built his church here in St. Augustine.
That
Flagler
church,
Memorial
yes.
Presbyterian is built in honor of his daughter.
Okay.
And it is spectacular.
Oh, we're going to go
Hopefully
check
you get
that
to go
one
in
out.
that. It'll be open today. So
Yes.
yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
By the way, the stained glass windows in that church are not Tiffany.
Really? I was
They-
going to assume they were, but okay.
Well, yeah, beautiful
Tell me.
scenes in them. It's
Yeah.
done by a gentleman named Herman T. Schledermunt, which is every bit as much fun to say as it sounds. But he was a famous muralist back in the day. He actually did some of the murals inside the Ponce de Leon Hotel. But he did. Now, originally, the church, the architects didn't think they had enough window compared to wall to have stained glass. They thought it'd be too dark inside.
Okay.
So they used something called cracked glass, which is gorgeous. It looks like it's shattered,
Yes,
but it's
yes.
not. But shortly after that, the church elders decided they did want stained glass in the windows, so they employed Mr. Schledermunt over the next 12 years to replace all the glass in the church with stained glass, and it is stunningly gorgeous, but a lot of beautiful scenes and stuff, because he was a muralist. He could handle that. That's what he did.
Exactly. Being a muralist, of course, he's going to create
Absolutely,
now within.
yes.
He started within the glass itself. That's
Yes.
amazing. Wow.
Yes. So he was every bit as famous as Louis Comfort Tiffany in his day.
Oh, what's his name?
Herman T. Schledermunt.
Haman T. Schledermunt.
Schledermunt. He's
He's
American, but he's German origin.
background.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, gotcha. Okay.
Famous muralist.
Nice.
Some of the murals you saw yesterday that were up on the ceiling in the rotunda are his.
Unbelievable. Oh, and so he did the gilding where he did the gold leaf and then painted over them.
He did some of that,
beautiful
yes. Yes.
Amazing, amazing. Wow. And what about the mosaic? Back to architectural features and
Okay,
details.
okay.
The mosaic flooring in the rotunda in the Flagler Museum now,
Right.
you know, which the hotel, the Ponce de Leon Hotel, that you said that's original.
That is
rotunda.
original and laid down 1 square at a time.
One little mosaic at a time. It's not like they bought sheets 12 by
No,
12 and
no.
They actually drew it out and they actually chose the colors and created the pattern one little mosaic at a time and then
Absolutely.
going, oh my God, amazing.
That is so labor
That's
intensive.
how they do it, yeah.
The entire hotel took 23 months to build, which is, first of all, really fast. Less than 2
Yes,
years to build that whole
it's-
hotel.
whew.
But the floor, they worked on it the entire time. It took them that long to do the mosaic.
As long
Now,
as that, yeah.
If you look at it,
believe
it
that.
looks absolutely perfect.
Yes.
But it's not, because Flagler did that on purpose. He had a couple of tiles misplaced on purpose out of the design because he felt that the only thing that was perfect is God. And God can only create perfect things. So this floor had to be imperfect because he didn't want it to rival God.
That's really, I admire that, okay, because this is made by humans. And
Absolutely.
even nowadays, nothing is perfect. I mean, even when you do, something, but he actually went out of his way to do that, to show that. I got to go find that spot.
There's a couple of them in there, and they're pretty obvious. It's the black and whites, and you can tell when they're off.
Interesting.
Absolutely.
I was so focused on the overall beauty that now I'm going to have to go and start counting mosaics and find it, because now I'm interested in that one. That's so amazing. And then the woodwork, all these columns are the beautiful Renaissance ladies there, all of that.
It's all hand carved.
Hand carved, was it oak, mahogany?
I'm not sure. I believe it's mahogany, but I know it's hand carved, but I'm not sure
Okay.
of the,
we'll check
of the
it
type
out.
of wood.
Mahogany
Oak
wood.
is so hard to work with because it's
Exactly.
so hard. It's such a
Exactly.
solid wood. So I'm guessing it's mahogany because it's easier to work with.
That's what I'm thinking, and the way I would, if I had to guess, based on my experience on woodwork, okay, because we've created a lot of those, I would say all the soft wood, which is the mahogany, would be all the intricately carved parts, like the women and some of the corbels, the hand carved, and maybe the wood paneling that you see going up the stairs, which is just wood paneling. I would think that would be the oak.
That would make sense.
That would be
Absolutely.
my guess as a
Absolutely.
designer. And that's what I would have chosen if I were to do it, to create that whole detail, going on. So, all right, what else? Let's talk about more. What about anything? Oh, I want to hear more about that fountain in the entrance where the frogs.
Okay. Yes.
Yes.
The court. You're talking about the courtyard at the
courtyard.
Ponce de Leon Hotel. There's an elaborate fountain right in the middle. Now, everything in architecture, of course, means something at that point in history. Nobody does anything for just the look. It's always got to have a meaning behind it. Now, that's the Hotel Ponce de Leon. So Ponce de Leon, the founder of Florida. And when the Spanish would claim a new land, the ceremony was that the ranking officer on the ship would come ashore, draw his sword, raise it to God, claim the land in the name of God, and then turn and stab his sword into the ground to complete the claiming process. If you look at the fountain, it is the hilt of Ponce de Leon's sword plunged into the ground to claim Florida. So, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Now, it does have 12 frogs around it for each month of the year, and then it has 4 turtles in the fountain as well, which represent the 4 seasons. So that is the fountain itself. Now, in the courtyard, the walls around the fountain, you will see that they are coquina stone. The rest of the entire hotel is coquina concrete, which is man-made. The only coquina stone is around the fountain, and it has its own story to it. Now, when the hotel is being built, St. Augustine suffers the Great Fire of 1887. The fire was so bad, it burned down the fire department. That's a bad fire. It actually started in St. Augustine Hotel, burned it to the ground, started in their laundry, burned it to the ground in several blocks of the city. Now, the Catholic Church, which is the Cathedral Basilica, was damaged during the fire. Fire started right beside it, moved away from it, but it did damage, and one of the walls collapsed, and it was the coquina stone wall. Now, when coquina is exposed to flame, it becomes too brittle to be used in construction. So they couldn't use the blocks to be used in construction again. So Mr. Flagler, first of all, when the fire breaks out, this is a different time in history. All the workers that are building the hotel drop what they're doing to go help fight the fire.
Wow.
That's how society worked back then. Everybody helped out. Well, Mr. Flagler asked the Catholic Church, he's very religious, even though he's Presbyterian, but he's very religious and he supports all religions. He asked the Catholic Church if he can take the blocks from the collapsed wall because he wants to utilize them, and he puts them in the courtyard. It's the little wall around the fountain. Now, they couldn't support any weight, but they could be utilized. They weren't just going to be discarded. So he did that. He used them. He put them in around this fountain so they would be utilized. And as a thank you to the Catholic Church, if you notice the Cathedral Basilica today, the chapel is $17.99, but there's a huge clock tower to the left of it, and that is an 1887 gift from Henry Flagler. He built that and gave it to the Catholic Church.
Wow.
So he supported all the religions in town. He thought faith should be the cornerstone of every family.
I so admire that.
Not just his faith, but all of them. In fact, we did have a synagogue in St. Augustine at that point, and he supported them as well.
Look at that. Yeah, I love that. I love someone that, at the end of the day, we're all going to the same place. We came from the same place.
But he grew up the son of a poor Presbyterian minister, so he appreciated, first of all, the challenges the churches faced financially, but also that it was important in your life.
Especially in those days. That's pretty major. I mean,
we've gotten away from it now a little bit. But
that's amazing that, Okay, so, and why frogs and why turtles?
I think just the nature theme. They just went with paying homage to the wildlife of Florida and what a wilderness it was, especially at that time.
Yeah, that
I mean,
makes
it
sense.
is still.
I didn't
the
see
same.
any iguanas there, but yeah, no, I mean, it could
We
have
didn't
used
have
an iguana.
iguanas yet.
No,
They weren't in
yeah,
Florida
I was
at that
wondering
point.
about that. There's no iguanas, but I mean, to me, a frog is a lucky, from different cultures. Frogs represent luck, and so do turtles.
Okay.
I mean, I collect turtles, I collect frogs because they represent, from different cultures of the world. You have different, like beliefs, but it's just a thing. That's why when I saw that, I love the froggy, I love the turtles. People will see that, but obviously he had a reason as well. You just don't know, because it seems to me that a lot of the things he did have a history behind their symbolism. I don't know.
Well,
from what I see,
the legend is, and this is probably accurate, because the Ponce de Leon Festival in St. Augustine is ancient, and people think that when he first visited St. Augustine, that festival happened to be going on. Because growing up in New York, in rural New York, he would not have been exposed to the Spanish influence of Florida. He would have had no idea of that history.
right?
And he only had an 8th grade education.
Right,
So it's
right.
not like he's higher educated. So when he comes to Florida and happens into that Ponce de Leon Festival, he immediately learns the history and pays homage to it. That's why everything he builds in St. Augustine looks Spanish, or it's actually Moorish influenced, but that because he thought St. Augustine should be a European city
Yes.
in North America. Now, his
agree.
other construction, south of here, doesn't necessarily adhere to that architecture.
Oh, which is?
It's
Let's hear
much
that.
more of what was happening in the era. A lot of Mediterranean influences going on
Okay.
in, but not necessarily the Moorish influence. Most of that is here in St. Augustine.
Okay, wow.
Because the Breakers is not
I
Moorish.
was just going to say, the
not
Breakers, it's more Mediterranean. He
more
took the more
Mediterranean.
Mediterranean influence, and he carried that over there and whatnot.
Now,
So-
the Breakers burns down,
Yeah.
I think in 1905 originally.
Right.
Mr. Flagler rebuilt it. It also had fire damage in 1925. I believe that's the date. That's after Flagler's passed away, but some of the original structure survived that, of
It
course.
did, it did.
But the Mediterranean is becoming the big influence at that point in history.
Yes.
Like our Bridge of Lions here in St. Augustine is Mediterranean revival
Yes.
architecture.
Yes.
It's complete, I believe, in 1927. And that was a huge influence at that point in history.
Wow. So now, when we were walking around yesterday,
Okay.
like this hotel where we're staying, which is the
Renaissance.
The Renaissance, the architecture outside. You mentioned something about that whole area that we were standing on that corner.
Well,
The
yep.
building itself.
The building itself is a
Yes.
combination of 3 old hotels that no longer exist here in
3.
St. Augustine, but it's paying homage to their designs. You have the San Marco Hotel, which was the one that influenced Flagler, the big wooden hotel that stood right across the street from here that burned down in 1895. You have the Magnolia, which was down on Charlotte Street.
Okay.
And then we have the Barcelona Hotel, which was actually owned by Mr. Flagler, but it was actually an old mansion that belonged to the Ball family. Now, a lot of people think of the Ball family, they think of mason jars.
Right.
And that was distant relatives of these people. This guy was a Wall Street financier, and that was
Okay.
his winter home. Mr. Flagler acquired property that home was on. He actually had it moved out of the way of hotel construction, but he moved it to an area, and then it was opened as a little boutique hotel as well. So those 3 hotels are combined into the design of the hotel we're sitting in right now, paying homage to the history.
So paid homage to those 3 hotels that are no longer in existence, and in this block they designed this Renaissance hotel. And then if you look at the architecture, you can see the 3 different styles
Sure,
fused into one building, which is one of our favorite things to do. We love fusing styles, we love fusing eras, we love fusing architecture, design, and that's what makes it stand the test of times. I mean, because it's like you're taking how many years of history and putting it into one element. Think about it.
Even those 3 hotels
Yeah.
are over 30, 40-year difference.
Right.
I mean, over that time span.
30, 40-year difference.
And that's a long time.
Right,
It's
but
a lot of stuff happens in 30, 40 years as far as
Especially in
style.
that time, yeah. Well, it's happening now as we speak. Look, styles are
Absolutely.
changing right now. No, I'm
Absolutely.
kidding.
They are, absolutely.
They are. So, and all those 3 hotels, I'm curious because I didn't see them. They're no longer there from the outside, but for the inside, obviously they carry the architecture inside, and some of it had looked like a little British look. I don't know what.
No,
what were
it's almost all that era of the Gilded Age. So they're incorporating a lot of Victorian style.
Victorian, okay.
A lot of Victorian
The
style. in those.
Victorian,
Absolutely.
but through the 40 years, let's say, then it's fused into the one building, which I
Yes.
love. Okay.
But if you look at the outside, you can see the 3 differences.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
it's very obvious.
Yeah,
and
the
they've
way-
made it obvious on purpose. And well done.
Yeah, I actually thought it was 3 different buildings at one point because we were there, okay, the restaurant's here, the hotel's there. I don't know which entrance I should go through, but it's fabulous from the outside. It's just, I love it. So now we also walked around that Ripley's, believe it or not, that castle.
True.
Ooh, the castle. Let's talk about that one.
The Ripley's, believe it or not,
Yes.
is housed in the Warden Castle. William Warden built that castle as his winter home. Now, he was a president of Standard Oil, so he was a very wealthy man.
Yes.
He built that poured concrete structure, which is massive, as his winter home. It had a couple of evolution throughout its history. At one point, it was a hotel that was owned by Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings, the famous author,
Yes,
who
Rawlings.
wrote Cross Creek and The Yearling. And it became, now, Robert Ripley tried to acquire it from Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings several times, and she wouldn't sell it. But when he passed away, and he's one of the most famous men in the world, but when he passes away, they finally decide to sell it to his estate. And it becomes the very first Ripley's, believe it or not, museum in the world. So it is the original. And it's also haunted.
It's haunt. We want to hear about the haunting, the
Okay.
haunted stories, the haunted castle, no, not the haunted house or the haunted hotel. Because when you look at that hotel at the time and now Ripley's, believe it or not, the whole style of the architecture, it looks like a castle.
It does.
Like a
That's why
replica.
it's called the
of-
Warden Castle.
Yes,
because it
well,
looks like a castle.
but it looks like, yeah, like, I mean, what era castle was that? Like, from where? Like, what influence? It's got a little Moorish to it?
It does have a Moorish influence.
Moorish
I believe it's an
influence, kind of.
1895 construction.
Okay.
So it does have the heavy Moorish influence.
I love it.
So that was the era here. That's what Mr. Flagler brought here. And of course, this gentleman works for
Carry through.
Standard Oil. So he's just going to carry that on.
I love it. Okay.
Now, the hotel was, if you go
I
in.
have a quick question. Do you think, because I'm heavily believing in this, do you think, I know the answer already, or obviously you're going to agree with me, that Henry Flagler, Uncle Henry, okay, he was the type not to follow trends. He was the type to set the trend. That's it. I'm setting the trend. He wasn't following whatever else was going on. I don't know. Was he the type?
Honestly, none of those guys followed trends.
There you go.
They looked for opportunities. As businessmen, they weren't afraid to jump from one industry to another. Weren't afraid of that at all.
Right.
Henry Flagler is an oil man where he makes his fortune, then he jumps right into being a railroad man,
Right.
And then a hotelier. He's not. Those guys look for inefficiencies or needs, and they would fill them. Especially Henry Flagler, he never saw anything that he could imagine as impossible.
I love that.
When he decided to build the railroad across the ocean to Key West, people thought he was insane. They thought he had lost his marbles, he'd gotten old and senile, and he just has a crazy idea. And they called it Flagler's Folly, and they made fun of him in the
love that.
newspapers,
That's-
right up until the point he rode his own iron into Key West, and all of a sudden it was the 8th wonder of the world. To equate Henry Flagler to somebody today, there's really only one person that would fit the mold. It's Elon Musk.
There you
Elon
go.
Musk, what they have in common is they don't see anything as impossible. Anything they can imagine, if with enough money and enough effort and enough engineering, you can get it done. If Elon Musk got up in the morning and said, I'm going to build a subway from Los Angeles to Hawaii, it would be no more shocking than Henry Flagler saying, I'm going to take a railroad from Miami to Key West. It had never happened. The railroad had never been built across an ocean. And the engineering didn't even exist. He had to hire engineers that thought they could get it done. And he hired the right people, put them in the right places, gave them. Now, the gentleman who was the chief engineer was a man named Sheridan. He actually passed his way during the construction. He worked himself to death. But he had just built a canal in Mexico as a big project. And Mr. Flagler decides this is the guy to do it. So he brings him to St. Augustine for an interview. And he tells him, he brings him into the interview, and they have a discussion. He accepts the offer to do it. And he was interviewed by the newspapers right after this. And he said the most impressive thing to him about the entire interview, Henry Flagler never asked one time how much it was going to cost. Only, can we do it?
Love it.
And that was it.
Yeah.
Now, Sheridan was kind of built from the Flagler build anyway. When Henry Flagler interviewed him, he had just come off this years-long project, and he's like, the guy's from Iowa, and he figures he's going to take a month off or so before he begins this years-long project. So he said, And, they decide that he hires him, he accepts the deal. He's like, go to Key West. When can you be there? And he goes, well, I can be there in 2 days. He didn't take any time off. He just went right to work. He went from one job right to the other job and just continued working along.
Right.
But he had that mentality of, I
That's-
have to get it done, and that's what I'm going to do.
He's a visionary, and he just got to it and did it, and definitely
Absolutely.
set the trends, because look what happened after. So, all right, so back to Ripley's Believe It or Not story of that building. Yes. Go
So
ahead.
first of all, I
Yeah.
apologize to the Ripley's folks who are friends of mine. I know all the folks over there. If I get the particulars of the haunting story wrong, I don't think so, but I think this is exactly what
Well,
happened.
it's your opinion. It's okay. We want to
Well,
hear
it's
based
haunted
on-
by 2 women.
Well, okay, here we go.
It's probably haunted by a number of things because of the stuff they have in there. But it's haunted for sure by 2 women who were killed in a fire, or actually were killed there, and that's results in the fire that gutted the place. So we go back to that Gilded Age when it's a hotel. But it's not the premier hotel in town. It is what I would call a secondary hotel, because most of these Gilded Age, these giants of the Gilded Age, all these guys with all this money, well, when they would travel seasonally, they would, of course, take their family. But they also would have the mistress come along as well. Now, she's not staying with or traveling with the family. So she would stay at like a secondary hotel, like what the Ripleys Believe It or Not, the Warden Castle. So the story goes that one of these mistresses was staying at the hotel, and she had become pregnant by a gentleman. And she's going to expose the whole thing and have the child. So an argument ensues between the gentleman who rented her room, and it's witnessed by people on the outside and stuff, and then it goes quiet. Somehow, she has fallen into the mantle and been killed. So to cover up this killing, this gentleman is trying to secretly take her body out of the hotel. Well, another woman sees this happening, and she is witness to him doing this. She's going to come into the rescue, and she's killed as well. So now he's killed 2 women. And to try to cover his tracks, he sets the hotel on fire to try to get away.
Yeah.
So it's obvious this is what's been done.
Right.
But a lot of the damage, you go in the Ripley's, it looks Frankenstein together, because it is from fire damage.
Okay.
Now, back then, of course, when you checked into a hotel, you would have to sign the registry. You came in. So this gentleman's name should be on the registry for that room of the original woman who's passed away. So they go back to the registry, the authorities do, and it just says Mr. X. So his name's not on the registry. But the mystery is the name above his has been removed. It's been erased and scratched out from the registry. And what they presume happened is that the guy that signed in behind that gentleman, he knew him. So to prevent him being involved in any investigation, he goes to the registry and gets his name, gets his name removed, and the crime is never solved. And they think that's the motivation for the haunting, is that the crime has never been solved, and it's never going to be. Most likely, it was somebody very prominent that just had the ability to get to the right authorities, to have names removed, and not have their name ever come out.
So then that's where it's haunted, the ghost coming
The
back.
2 women are
Yeah.
haunting the location,
Yeah. Wow.
who were burned up in the fire, but they weren't killed in the fire. They were killed before the fire.
Right.
The fire was the cover to
Right,
try to
right,
cover
right.
the evidence, to cover
Oh.
the tracks of the crime.
Uh-huh. So there's stories about haunting. You hear what, women screaming or what?
Oh, well, now that's the story in
What do they hear?
Flagler College.
Okay. So
and
there's different stories no matter what. There's always going to be different
every
stories.
place in town
Yeah,
has
they
its
all
haunted.
have
This
stories.
is the most haunted town in the country,
Yeah,
without a
yes,
doubt.
yeah.
Sorry, Savannah, Georgia, who thinks they are. Savannah's haunted. Don't get me wrong.
Savannah would be second?
There's a lot of haunted.
Oh, they're all
Every
over.
town.
Oh, they're all over. Yeah. Okay.
Urbana, Illinois says they're the most haunted. Yeah, it's a lot of places. Salem, of course, is Salem. There were no witches there, but it's still haunted. But anyway, yeah, we're the most haunted town in the country. But at the old Ponce de Leon Hotel, which is Flagler College, there is the story of the Screaming Woman. Now, some ghost tours have made up some stories about it, but nobody knows who she is. But it's so frequent that they don't even call the police anymore when they hear screaming in the old dorm, because it happens all the time and everybody knows what it is. It's just some spirit in there just ranting and raving and
They're
screaming
probably
off
just
in the
hanging.
distance.
Yeah, they're just hanging out together. She becomes part of the college, whatever. I mean, it's like they're
Apologies
used
to
to it.
Flagler College. They do not acknowledge that it's haunted.
No, that's okay.
But everybody kind of knows. I know at least 3 students I've talked to personally who have heard the screaming over the years. So Yeah, sorry, it's true.
There's stories, yeah, there's stories that people tell, and you know, you believe what you want to believe. That's it. You know, that's how I see it. People want to believe what they want to believe, and in
Absolutely.
general, that's a human. I believe it's a human nature to believe what you believe, and what you don't want to believe, you just don't believe it. I don't know. I can't be more clear than that one, right? Just saying. So, all right, so that's amazing. And then what other unique architectural building still stands here that we can go
Well,
see?
first of all, I did want to touch on the fact that
Yes.
most of St. Augustine's existence, it's poor. So they're not building like, oh, we're bringing our architecture from Europe to do it. It's all functional.
Right.
It's all but it's all what they know. So they inadvertently are bringing their architecture to the New World. Now you'll see a lot of the old Spanish homes, like from the early colonial eras, will not have an entrance to the street. There will be no front door that goes in from the street.
Not from the street.
It will enter a courtyard.
Okay.
The courtyard door can be locked off, and then there's another door into the home.
So it's like a courtyard home,
Well,
courtyard
the
style.
courtyard will be the entrance to get into the home for security purposes.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it's a little more dangerous, a little more volatile back then. So you want that level of security. Now you will see a lot of these homes that have a doorway cut to the street. That's later on. That's more British period when that's usually done. So you see Spanish homes that are remodeled into the British period. Almost all of your Spanish homes that survive from the colonial era, especially the early colonial eras, there's nothing older than 1702 because the town was burned to the ground. But
So 1702 will be the oldest, let's say, house
yes.
in town? Okay.
Yes. We have the oldest house museum here in St. Augustine, which is a fantastic example. There's about 5 homes that actually date from about the same era. That is acknowledged as the oldest home in the city, but it is the best demonstration of the evolution of the architecture. So if that's your thing, I highly recommend visiting that. But it'll show you the evolution. Usually the Spanish homes are 1-story stone.
Correct. Yes.
You'll see a second story built on top of these things. It's wooden, and that's British. You see the
Right.
British influence
Yes.
come in with that.
Yeah.
But even back to the colonial era, you'll see different styles of roofs. And it depends on where they come from. You'll see the very flat styles of roof, which is southern Spain.
Right.
But the northern Spanish, you see the very high peaked roofs.
Correct.
Because of snowfall. You have a high
Correct.
peak roof because snow will sit on your roof, but if it's a high peak, it'll come off.
Yes.
But if you don't have snow, you'll build it flat. So you see the different type of influences there. And people didn't know that that's the reason they were bringing that. They just knew what they had in Spain. And when they came here, they just built what they knew. So that's why you see the different styles of that. But even down to the city planning, the Spanish were very good about incorporating the environment they were in. The streets of Old St. Augustine are specifically designed in St. Augustine to funnel the sea breezes into the middle of the city to keep it cool. Because, there's no air conditioning, of course, and we're in a hot weather environment. So the streets would funnel the sea breezes into the city to keep it cool. But you'll also notice the streets aren't exactly straight. They have a little bit of curve to them. Almost all the streets do. Now that is for security. Because your big attacks are coming from cannons. Some of them are coming from the ships. So
Right.
ships in the harbor couldn't shoot cannonballs completely down the street.
So
It would not get all the way down
Right.
because the streets curve a bit. The Spanish were really, really good strategists, very common sense oriented. The fort is common sense perfect. It is the most perfectly designed building I've ever seen. Everything about it makes total sense. And the Spanish had that mentality. Everywhere they went to build colonies, they were always incorporating into what was already there.
what they already know works in
Right.
their.
But
yeah.
they're already also using what the locals have already figured out.
Correct.
The coquina stone, the Timucuan were already using that. So they knew that was there. That now the Timucuan were using it to line the tops of their wells to keep the wells open. Clearly the Spanish saw other applications as the huge Castillo de San Marcos is made out of coquina. But they would utilize that thing. But also they noticed that the Timucuan, when they would build their structures, they were using palm logs mounted upside down.
Oh.
And what that does is a palm log mounted upside down will last centuries without rotting. It has to do with the internal hydrodynamics of the wood, but the Spanish incorporated that as well because it had already been, why reinvent the wheel if somebody's
Right,
already figured it out?
I agree.
So
yes.
they were really good about incorporating things, and that's why they were so colonially successful around the world, because they always adapted to their environments that they went to. Now the British were just the opposite. tried to build Little Britain everywhere they went.
Would you like a cup of tea?
Exactly.
I had to. Would you like a cup of tea? Yeah, here we go. I got cappuccino, but go on. Sorry.
But
I can't.
but it goes back to their roots. Spain is an evolution of societies as influence come in or pushed out and stuff like that. You have all kinds of influences happening, so they're used to societally changing with things. The British have been on their own little island forever, and they thought they were the superior society, so they tried to implement it all around the world. That's no longer the case, of course, but the Spanish Empire is dominant right up until the British Empire really takes that over with the Spanish Armada being defeated in the English Channel in 1588.
In 1588, okay.
There's several armadas that are defeated.
But
That's
I
the
have
big
a question. Okay, so like, I travel all over Spain, and there's always a plaza. In Italy, there's the piazza, which is the central plaza.
Sure.
So when the city was pretty much, I guess, founded or designed, they started with a plaza?
No, not originally.
I want to understand that part.
Not
yeah.
originally.
Okay.
Now, they did incorporate that pretty quickly here.
The plaza, okay.
But it's 1598.
Okay.
By royal decree, all Spanish colonial holdings around the world are reformatted into having the town plaza as the center of the city, and then everything would radiate off of it. And they did that for familiarity purposes.
Yes.
So any plaza around the New World that you go to today, it's going to be set up the same way. It's going to be on the water, because that's where you get your goods. They'll come in by boat.
Right.
There's going to be a market there at the water line, because that's where the goods are marketed to the citizens. Standing on the water, on the shore, looking at the plaza, if you look to your right, you're always going to find your official state church, which is a Catholic church for the Spanish Catholic Empire.
Right.
Across the plaza is always going to be your government location.
Right.
It's always the same setup, and then everything else radiates off of that. Like the first street built off our plaza, which actually was established in 1579.
Okay.
It becomes the plaza. We're only 14 years old at that point in history. Is Aviles Street,
Aviles,
or as you'll hear it called in St. Augustine, Aviles, because we mispronounce many things.
So it's Aviles, but it's Aviles, like
it's
what's
Aviles
his
in
name?
Spain.
Yes,
It's Aviles in
Spain.
Yeah, Pedro Menendez de Aviles is from Aviles in Spain.
Right.
That's why.
There we go.
He is of Aviles.
Yes, Pedro de Aviles.
That was the first street
Yeah.
built off the plaza, and so it's the oldest main street in all of North America.
Aviles, okay.
Now the British came in and changed the name to Hospital Street because that's where the hospital was.
Oh.
That's kind of how the British did things. They just named it after what was there, which makes a lot of practical sense, but it's not very stylish. But yeah, Hospital Street, and then it came back
let's
to
be
being-
honest here. Do you guys want to walk down Hospital Street or Aviles Street? I'm going Aviles.
And it wasn't originally named Aviles, but that's another story
all right,
altogether.
so-
They didn't name the streets back
No. So what was the name from the beginning?
It didn't have a name.
It had no name.
didn't name-
okay.
they didn't name streets.
It was just the street by the plaza where all the stuff, where all the main stuff is.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So were there mostly homes in Aviles Streets? What is there now in Aviles Street? That's
Now,
a famous street.
it is. Now the main tourist center of St. Augustine is St. George Street.
St. George?
Aviles is less touristy. You see a lot of the history museum is on
Are they
it.
parallel to each other?
No.
Oh, so let's say this is the plaza, so they can
so you have the
visualize the
square
floor
plaza.
plan. Yeah.
St. George Street comes back into the back of the plaza.
Okay.
Aviles is just off to the other side. It's across the plaza and more toward the bayfront.
Got it. Okay.
But it's a really cool place to visit. You see a lot of local artists have their galleries down through there, and the shops are, let's say, more unique, less touristy.
Love it. So more unique, like art galleries and things like that?
Yes,
Okay.
so absolutely you need to visit that. And plus it's more the old neighborhood. A lot of that is original, or not original, but colonial era stuff. Colonial buildings in St. Augustine, I would put between 10 to 15% of it is colonial, actually from the era. The rest of it's recreation to look like it.
Okay.
Now Flagler era homes are about 50% original.
Oh,
So a
wow.
lot of those
Yeah.
have survived.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but you see a lot of the examples of the architects who we talked about in the courtyards, and then the British influence later on and stuff like that.
Right.
The oldest house is on that far south end of St. Augustine as well. The Oldest House Museum, which I would recommend. People of architecture and design
Yes.
greatly appreciate their little tour they have. It's
Just
very
walking
cool.
down that street, huh?
Well,
So-
just walking down the street, absolutely.
Yeah. So what would you, I mean, what is the difference between, let's say, a colonial house? If we're walking through Aviles, you see a colonial house and then you see a British influence house. What do you see the difference architecturally? Is it the overhang balconies, the roofs? I'm just curious so people can
So the
see
roofs are
difference.
usually,
Yeah.
like I mentioned earlier, the influence of northern and southern Spain.
Right.
The second floors and the balconies are almost always a British influence,
Okay.
or from a British influence from before. It's a recreation, but it's
Okay.
almost always from the British influence. The wooden second story on top of the stone first story. It's almost always British.
Okay.
So that's the influence. You see it as an evolution throughout time. Again, just our colonial history runs from 1565 to 1821. So that is a huge swath of time
Yes.
for things to change,
So,
but they don't change a lot. The influences are very subtle because we just don't have a lot of influx of people here. It's a very small colonial, really port,
Yeah.
outpost.
Yeah.
Population, not very much. Originally, we're around 900 total people.
Yeah.
We fall down under 300 a couple of times. So we're just a small outpost. But that's probably why we survived.
Yes.
Because nobody cared. Nobody was sitting in Europe going, we need to take over St. Augustine.
Right.
Nobody cared. The only reason we were important to the Spanish
Yeah.
Empire is location, which
Location.
is always relevant in real estate, as
Right.
everybody tells you. The
Yes.
three most important things are
Location.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
So we are on the Gulf Stream, it's right off the coast.
Yeah.
Well, every 6 months, the Spanish will load up all the loot they have acquired, let's say acquired from Central and South America, and they would load it up into a huge armada, the treasure fleet, because there's safety in numbers. And you'd have all these treasure ships escorted by all these military ships, and they would gather it all throughout the Caribbean. They would join up in Havana, Cuba, and then would all go back to the old world together. And they would use the Gulf Stream to do that because it cuts down the time frame.
Right.
The last friendly port for the Spanish before they turn across the Atlantic to go to Spain is St. Augustine.
Yeah.
So if anything goes wrong, they have this port as a refuge. That never happened, but
Right. But
it was
it's
there.
good to know.
So about 2 weeks out of the year, St. Augustine was very important to the Spanish Empire. And the rest of the time, they could really care less if you lived or died. But, the kings operate the way kings operate.
Yeah, they got
and
their-
subjects are just that. They're just there to help me. That's the way they looked at it. So
I love it.
But yeah, 2 weeks out of the year, we were very important.
Yes.
The rest of the year, and if you were deployed here as in the Spanish military, you probably did something wrong somewhere else. I would equate it to being sent to Nome, Alaska in the 1970s in U.S. Army. Basically, we just don't want you involved in anything
Right,
anymore.
so just stay there.
That and a bunch of outlaws. If you want to disappear, St. Augustine was a good place to come to.
I love it. And so tell me more about the city gates, because that's another thing about the old city, the original, with the gates. Yeah.
In 1702,
Yeah.
Spanish Florida is attacked by the British. So let's backtrack in the history.
Backtrack.
This is Queen Anne's War. Queen Anne's War is 1702 to 1713. Queen Anne's War is the first of what are considered the French and Indian Wars. There's not just one French and Indian War, there's actually 4 major ones. And that's the first of them. You have King William's War, you have the War of Jenkins' Ear, and then finally what people call the French and Indian War. That's all basically one series of several wars between mostly the British and the French. Other people get involved. And it really starts out as the battle for North America, but it ends up being the First World War. But anyway, Queen Anne's War, 1702. Now, the British colonies, which become America, the British Empire is worried about the Spanish influence and the French who have claimed Louisiana. And they're worried that the French and the Spanish are going to unite to attack the British colonies of America. So as a preemptive strike, they're going to attack the port of St. Augustine to try to limit the ability of these two superpowers, or these two powers, to combine and attack them. So Governor Moore comes up with this idea out of the Carolina colony. It is, I say Carolina because South Carolina doesn't even exist yet for the 9 years. But Governor Moore is going to lead his British forces down to attack Spanish Florida, which means attacking its capital at that time. So that is your British siege of 1702. It's the beginning of that war. Now, the fort is built at that time. So the governor knows the British are coming because they're crushing Spanish missions along the way. So they know he's coming to the capital. The governor here in St. Augustine has to make a tough decision. Now, he doesn't feel he has the military resources to protect the city and the fort. He decides to evacuate the city. He pulls all of his citizens, all of his resources into the fort. He feels he can hold it till reinforcements arrive from Havana, Cuba, which is true. History proves him correct. But to do it, he had to sacrifice the city. Now, the British couldn't militarily control the area because they couldn't take the fort. And when the reinforcements arrive from Havana, Cuba, they're forced to retreat. Before they do that, Governor Moore orders the burning down of the evacuated city of St. Augustine. That's why we have no buildings in St. Augustine older than 1702.
Right.
But to prevent that from happening again, we start building walls around St. Augustine to protect it. And our first wall was called the Kubo Line, and it ran from the fort all the way across the peninsula to the San Sebastian River. and it created St. Augustine as a walled-off peninsula. It's surrounded on 3 sides by rivers. So that's the first wall it's constructed. A second wall is constructed down Cordova Street, but that wall created us as a walled-off peninsula, and the only way to enter the city on land was through our city gates, which still stand today. They're the only portion of the wall still standing today. So that was the focal point of the entrance to the city of St. Augustine is your city gates. It's all that remains of our city wall, from which used to be a presidio or walled-in city. And the walls are somewhat impressive, 8 to 9 feet tall, earthen mounds fortified on either side by those inverted palm logs because they last a long time.
Right.
And so that basically circled the entire city on 3 sides, and the Matanzas River protect the 4th side.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the only remaining part of that wall is the city gate.
The city gates.
itself.
Now the city gates themselves. No, the columns are not original.
Oh, wow.
The only part that's truly original in the colonial era are the high walls on either side. The pillars are colonial, but they're not original. They were actually originally wooden. Wooden eventually rots away in a coastal environment. They were replaced with coquina in 1808. So a little more than 100 years later, they were replaced with coquina, and they've been there ever since.
Okay.
It was, by the way, visually for everybody, it was a wooden drawbridge.
It was a wooden
And each and every night that drawbridge is closed up tight. We were a nervous city. Because of the siege of 1702, we're now the northernmost outpost of the Spanish Empire. And with all those British colonies to the north showing us several times they'd love to take us over, we're hiding behind our high walls with our overbuilt fort.
Awesome.
But you know what? The walls were never breached. They worked.
It worked. So
They-
the plan worked. Yeah.
From their completion in 1704 to the wall's final full deconstruction in 1836. That takes us well into the American period, so they did their job while they existed.
So until when was the city walled in? I mean, when was the walls removed?
The original walls,
Yeah.
now over time, things relax. It's less of a volatile military situation.
Right.
And the walls are deteriorating here and there. And the city is expanding outside of the walls too.
Right.
That was always the case. You always had people settling out in
yeah.
the wilderness.
Yeah.
But,
The suburbs.
they officially took down the city walls in 1836.
Oh,
But we've
okay.
already become an American territory at that point in
Right.
1821.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
No, that's,
we don't need a wall anymore.
Right. There you go.
Although they didn't know the Civil War was coming, they probably could have used it later on, but they didn't realize that was coming.
Right. That's interesting. Oh my goodness! Wow, there's so much history. There's so much more to see and so much more to learn. But I want to thank you for really sharing your knowledge, for being such a history nut. We love nuts.
I call myself a history nerd. I love it. I love history, and
you know it. You know your history, man.
And it's always important because history is just the story of us. There's only one story. There's not separate histories. We're all interconnected. There's only one history. However, a lot of history books are incomplete. And so the history's not complete. So we're not learning. There's no new history. We're just learning the old history as we go through time.
And guess what? We're not done creating history. We're creating history as we speak. And
we're in the middle of history right now.
Yeah, it keeps going. It only keeps going. Everlasting history. And what's today is not history yet, but it will be tomorrow. So, I mean, that's how I see it.
Absolutely. And I want to tell everybody out there.
Yes, please.
Observe what goes on around you, because you are in the middle of history.
Yes.
History's happening all around us. The newspaper headlines today are tomorrow's history books. So observe what's going on. And chances are, if you live a full, long life, it's a very good chance you will witness a historic event. Realize what you're looking at and realize the importance of today's events, just like those of the past. They're going to influence the future. So pay attention to your history.
That's great advice.
All the mistakes that have ever been made in the world, that can ever be made, have been made dozens of times. If you will just learn history, you have a lot less chance of repeating those mistakes. As the old adage goes, those who don't learn history are doomed to repeat it.
It's so true.
And I'll get off that soapbox.
Oh no, I love it. I mean, they do say history repeats itself.
It does, absolutely.
So I might as well learn your history, understand it. So when you see that pattern of it repeating itself, be a part of it and maybe make it better as you go. I don't know. I'm just saying, my advice. But really, I want to thank you,
You're
history professional, historian. You really know it, and we're coming back to you.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And
You're very
thank
welcome.
you, everybody, for listening and having fun with us today.